Two little twin girls suddenly ran up to a wealthy stranger and said, "You look so much like our dad." A few days later, the court summoned the millionaire, and there he broke down in tears when he looked so familiar. A little girl's voice, soft like the late autumn breeze, echoed at a quiet bus stop on the edge of a mountain town. It was an afternoon with a low sky, a chilly breeze blowing now and then, and the sunlight had taken on a bronze hue over the pothole-ridden road. The bus stop, made of corrugated metal, had kids' handprints and scribbled heart shapes on its rusted wall. The long aluminum bench was dented, its paint peeling. The air still carried faint hints of exhaust fumes, hot plastic, and fried pastries from the street corner. Two twin girls sat close together at the far end of the shelter, hair messy, clothes thin and dusty, hands tucked into their jacket pockets, knees drawn to their chests. A worn-out backpack, with only one strap still intact, lay by their feet. No one noticed them. No one asked why these two children were there alone. "I'm not sure," but he really does. His eyes look sad, like the ones in your painting. The younger one's voice trembled slightly, her eyes avoiding the man stepping out of the black sedan, parked at an angle. "Shh, don't let him see you staring," the older girl whispered, her hand still clenched around something inside her jacket pocket. The man, Nathan Grayson, didn't hear that. But there was a strange moment when he felt like someone was calling him from far away. In a whisper, he turned, glanced at the bus stop, then kept walking. "Mr. Nathan, are you headed to the meeting?" The voice of Ed, his longtime driver, came from behind the wheel. "No," Nathan replied, glancing briefly at the watch on his wrist, his voice as even as a keystroke. "I just need a moment of quiet. Just going for a walk." He walked slowly along the sidewalk, his polished shoes landing softly. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, just like it had been for the past 30 years without change. People often said Nathan lived by the clock like a Swiss watch, always polite, discreet, never in a rush, yet never stopping. At the company, his assistants would whisper things like, "He's like the top floor of the building, cold, elegant, but unreachable." I once saw him sit alone in the conference room for 2 hours, didn't call anyone, didn't say a word. Nathan never heard those comments, and if he had, he probably wouldn't have responded. A man like him, who'd learned how to survive in silence, would treat gossip like wind passing through glass. Passing by the bus stop was just a coincidence, but Amara's hand tightened. She pulled a photo from her pocket, stood up straight, though her legs were still trembling. "Sir," that voice was soft, hoarse, as if it had hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. Nathan paused, furrowed his brow slightly, about to turn away. He didn't make a habit of talking to kids in public. "Sir," the voice came again, this time clearer, accompanied by an image that made him stop in his tracks. The older girl stood up, pulling an old photo from her coat pocket. The picture was warped, its edges frayed white. She held it out, hands trembling slightly, but her eyes steady. "Sir, you look just like our dad." Nathan stood still. No reaction, only his eyes moved. From the girl to her younger sister looking down, then to the photo. A black and white picture. In it was a young man in a white shirt, hair slightly tousled, his arm resting lightly on the shoulder of a woman with gently curled hair. Her eyes staring into the lens, not smiling, but with a warm gaze. That photo. There was no mistaking it. It was him, nearly 10 years ago. And that woman. "That's our mum," the girl said, pointing at the woman in the photo. Nathan took his hand out of his pocket and slowly reached for the picture. His lips parted, as if to ask something but closed again. His hand was cold. Ice cold. As if he had just touched something so familiar. It hurt. "Little one?" "Where did you get this photo?" he asked, trying to keep his voice even. Amara didn't answer right away. She turned to look at Alina. Alina clutched the wooden box tighter, then gently nodded. "Mom gave it to us, before she passed." An older woman walked by, glancing at the two children, then at Nathan. She frowned and muttered, "So many homeless kids these days. Don't go letting them take advantage of the rich." Nathan said nothing, but his gaze shifted. He looked at her, eyes like ice, enough to make her stop in her tracks and walk away. He bent down to get a better look at the girls, not because of what the woman said, but because when the distance closed, he saw those eyes, deep brown with strange grey rims, identical to his own. No DNA test needed, no medical records, just that gaze and the way the younger one tilted her head down to avoid a stranger's eyes, just like Clarisse, when she didn't want to argue but still refused to give in. "What are your names?" he asked, this time his voice rougher and lower. "I'm Amara. And this is my little sister, Alina. I'm the older one. I'm the one who keeps the photo, and she's the one who keeps the box." Nathan was slightly taken aback by how the two girls spoke in turn, like a rehearsed act they'd been waiting to perform for anyone willing to listen. "How long has it been since your mother passed?" he asked, then immediately regretted it. 3 years, Amara replied. "She had heart disease. No one let her stay in the hospital long. She said, if anything happened, we should go find our father." Alina took a thin piece of paper from the box, a letter folded in quarters, the paper yellowed with age. She didn't open it, just held it tightly. "I've kept this, but I never dared to read it." Nathan bent down. He was about to ask, "Who's taken care of you since then?" But he realized there was no need. Their clothes, their shoes, the dry skin on their hands, all of it had already answered him. A breeze passed by. Nathan looked down at the photo in his hand. A couple looking straight into the camera, an old picture faded in black and white. It was hard to make out the faces, but he recognized the way she leaned her head on his shoulder, the way her hand rested gently on his back. He remembered it. That wasn't coincidence. That was a fragment of a life he had tried to forget, now surfacing clearly, vividly, without a hint of blurriness. He was silent for a long time. Then he handed the photo back to Amara, his fingers squeezing lightly as they touched her small hand. "Are you sure?" he asked, though he wasn't sure what he meant. "About their mother, the photo, the name Clarisse, which once sounded like a curse." "Yes," Amara said, not blinking. "Are you our father?" Alina said nothing. She just tilted her head up to look at him, then set the wooden box on her lap, like a small gift waiting to be opened. For the first time in over a decade, Nathan found he had no immediate answer, only a vague feeling, as if someone was gently knocking from inside his chest, steadily, patiently, and refusing to be ignored. Clarisse. Was it really her? Clarisse, who once carried the child he thought was gone. And now, maybe 2. He handed the photo back to the girls, and the world seemed to stop. Late afternoon in the suburbs, a soft breeze drifted through the sparse maple trees. The ground was damp and scattered with fallen leaves, layered like forgotten pages of a book. A grey cat walked quietly across the church roof, tail lowered, pausing to listen to the distant chime of bells. The sound came from the convent school, where every evening Sister Teresa prayed alone before cooking dinner for the children no one came to pick up. "Where are you staying?" Nathan asked, as the two girls turned to go, still gripping the old photo he had just returned. Amara looked back, her eyes still direct. "With Sister Teresa." "The church near the abandoned factory." "Is anyone taking care of you?" "We take care of each other." Alina didn't say a word. She just lowered her head, clutching the strap of her backpack as if letting go would dissolve all her memories into the wind. After a few steps, Amara turned back and pressed the old photo into Nathan's hand. Our mother gave each of us a copy of this photo. I'm giving you one. If you're our father, please keep it. But if you're not, return it to me at the church. With that, she took her sister's hand and walked on. Nathan watched the two small figures moving along the sidewalk, streetlights casting long shadows on the ground, dragging along a childhood that had no chance to grow. That warehouse had once been the place Clarice brought the girls to shelter from the rain for the first time after being thrown out by a landlord in the middle of the night for not being able to pay enough and having a small child. Amara remembered that night well, her mother carrying Alina on her back, walking 3 blocks in the cold rain, shoes soaked, hair stuck to her forehead. Every time her mother coughed, Amara squeezed her hand tighter. Amara was only 5.5 then, but she still remembered her mother kneeling on the warehouse floor, laying down a thin coat and saying, "Just sleep for a little while. Tomorrow Mummy will figure something out." Alina didn't remember much, just a scent, cheap soap mixed with mildew, and her mother's voice in the night. "Your father once held me in a heavy rain. His hands didn't say much, but they were warm. That's what I remember most." Their first breakfast in the warehouse was a dry loaf of bread. Clarice cut it into 3 parts. Hers, always the smallest, and always the crust. "I already ate," she said, but Amara saw her swallow hard. One morning, a few months after their mother passed away, the 2 girls no longer had enough money to stay at the boarding house. Amara decided to look for food in the garbage dump behind the market. She pulled Alina along, even though she knew it wasn't right. "We're not taking anyone's stuff," she said, "just picking up what people threw away." Half a loaf of bread was still in its plastic bag, probably tossed out because it had expired just 1 day ago. Alina picked it up, not yet unwrapping it, when a fish vendor noticed them. "Hey, don't touch other people's trash," the woman shouted. "Girls like your mother used to fake being nice just to beg." Alina froze. Amara stepped in front of her sister, her eyes wide, but her voice softer than usual. "I'm sorry. We'll leave." Behind them, the cursing went on, but the 2 girls didn't look back. At that moment, it started raining again. The first time they met Sister Teresa, the sisters were curled up in the corner of the church courtyard, their hands soaking wet, hair clinging to their faces. Sister didn't ask much. She just handed each of them a dry towel and a wooden stool, then began cutting their hair with a kitchen scissor. No complaints, no gestures of pity. She worked as if it was routine, as if she had been cutting hair for kids like them a few times every month. "What's your name?" "Amara." "And your sister?" "Alina." "All right, sit still." After finishing their haircuts, Sister Teresa took out a slip of paper and wrote down their names with an old fountain pen. On it, besides their names, were only 2 lines. No legal guardian, no identification documents. "Do you think Dad really exists?" Alina asked once, when the 2 were lying close together in the corner of the old crucifix storage room, where Sister Teresa allowed them to sleep overnight. Amara didn't reply right away. She turned and wrapped her arms around her sister. "Mum didn't lie." "Then why hasn't he come looking for us?" "Maybe someone hid our picture from him." Alina nodded slightly, then drifted off in silence, her face a little lighter, as if someone had just wiped away a sadness. On some afternoons, after Sister Teresa taught the children at church how to read the Bible, she would take them out to the backyard to pick fallen apples. Each apple was placed in a separate basket. When someone brought bread for charity, Sister would slice it thin, leaving the thickest part for the 2 sisters. "Eat up. It's colder than usual these days." Amara nodded, smiling faintly. But a moment later, she secretly wrapped her piece of bread and slipped it into her backpack. Alina saw it, but said nothing. The two children had learned to share without words. Once, during a class, Sister Teresa asked the children to draw the person they loved most. Alina didn't draw their mother. She drew a man, tall, wearing a long coat, his face unclear, but with sad eyes. "Who is this?" Sister asked. "My father." "Have you ever met him?" "Number E. But Mum told me a lot." "What do you remember the most?" Mum said Dad's voice was deep. He didn't talk much. But when Mum was in pain, all he had to do was hold her, and it would stop hurting. Sister Teresa looked at the drawing, then folded it carefully. "Then keep it. Who knows? One day, your father might see himself in your drawing." And that afternoon, when the bus stop had nothing left but wind and crumpled paper, when Mr. Nathan Grayson stepped up just to wait for a ride, none of the three of them knew that a circle was about to close. Because in every pencil stroke, every hidden piece of bread, every midnight whisper, those children carried the memory of a woman no one remembered. And that memory didn't die. It just hadn't been seen yet. Tuesday morning at St. Martin's Charity Centre began like any other, with the slapping of children's slippers, the smell of oatmeal mixed with warm milk, and the head nun scolding someone for oversleeping and not folding their blanket. Outside, a few blackbirds perched on the power lines, making short, abrupt cries. The April weather was still cold, but the sun had quietly risen early, casting a gentle light over the blotched walls. Alina sat alone in the corner of the art room. A blank sheet of paper lay before her, a soft pencil held in her left hand. Outside, children shouted and ran around the yard with rags turned into flags. But she didn't join them. Her eyes stayed fixed on the page, as if it were the only door to the place she wanted to go. Amara sat not far away, holding a thin notebook, copying yesterday's Bible passage Sister Teresa had taught. She glanced toward her sister, but said nothing. Just by looking at her face, she knew. Alina was drawing. "Why aren't you drawing your mom?" someone asked from behind. It was a blonde girl, with her hair tied high, the daughter of a volunteer who often came to the center. She looked at Alina's unfinished drawing with indifferent eyes. "There's no Dad to draw." Alina didn't look up. Her hand kept drawing. The strokes were slow and gentle, as if afraid to wake something sleeping. "Her dad is coming." Amara's voice came from behind, not loud, not sharp, but clear. Just slowly. The blonde girl shrugged and turned away. Amara stepped forward, placed a hand on her sister's shoulder, and sat down beside her. "Keep drawing. It's beautiful." Alina smiled slightly, then bowed her head again. She didn't need to ask how her sister knew she was drawing their father, because he was the only person she ever drew again and again, even though she had never seen him. But that image had lived in her memory from the stories their mother told. A man with sad eyes who always appeared when their mother was most afraid, doing nothing, just standing still. And everything would become calm. A while later, the art teacher walked into the class. His name was Richard, over 60, with thick grey hair, and his hands always stained with dried watercolor. He was adjusting the easel when his gaze suddenly stopped at Alina's desk. He stepped closer, silent for a long moment. "Who are you drawing?" he asked, voice soft, as if afraid to ruin something on the paper. "Dad." Alina answered, without looking up. "Have you ever met him?" Alina shook her head. "Mum told me. He's half a head taller than her, stands with a slight lean to one side. He loved her and us very much." Mr. Richard said nothing more. He sat down on a nearby chair, folded his arms, eyes fixed on the drawing. The figure of the man was sketched in monochrome pencil, face unclear, but the eyes, fine lines, deep, slightly drooping, stirred something tight in his chest. "What did your dad do for a living?" he asked, continuing the conversation. "I don't know, but he must have been important. Mum said many people used to listen to him." Mr. Richard nodded. He stood up, went into the next room, and returned with a plastic frame. Silently, he slipped Alina's drawing into it and gently wiped the glass with a handkerchief. "Keep it. Be careful with it." That afternoon, Mr. Richard stopped by the volunteer room and placed the drawing on Sister Teresa's desk. A woman with salt and pepper hair, sorting donated clothes, happened to glance at the drawing and froze. "My God!" she whispered. "Do you recognize someone who looks like this?" Mr. Richard asked. "I'm not sure, but I've seen a face like this. It looks a lot like some millionaire named Nathan something. Back when I worked at the city records office. Her name was Martha, retired for several years, now volunteering at the center 3 days a week. She used to work in the administrative office, handling residency and civil records. She recalled a woman named Clarice, once coming in to amend a file, but being denied due to missing documents. She talked about a child no one would acknowledge. I think I should call someone." The next morning, a silver pickup truck stopped in front of St. Maria Church. The elderly driver, Ed, wore a faded khaki jacket and a baseball cap. He got out and knocked on the church door. Sister Teresa recognized him immediately. "May I help you, sir? I'm a friend of Martha's. I heard about 2 kids drawing a picture of Mr. Nathan Grayson, my employer," he said plainly. "Sorry for showing up unannounced." Sister Teresa smiled warmly. "No worries. Martha mentioned something briefly. Please come in." Just then, Amara and Alina walked out from the dining room. Alina was still holding a tablecloth, her sleeves rolled up. When Ed saw them, he froze for a few seconds. "My God," he muttered. "How could it be Clarice?" He didn't ask anything else. Just sat down on the stone bench outside, pulled a cigarette from his jacket pocket, but didn't light it. Amara stood still. Alina held her sister's hand. "Our mum's name is Clarice," Amara said. "Sister Teresa said you used to know her." Ed sighed. His eyes squinted, not because of the sun. "I saw her 10 years ago. She stood in front of the Westbridge Mansion gates for 2 hours. Freezing cold. I asked if she needed help. She just said, 'I'm waiting for someone to hear the truth.' But that person never came out." He looked up at the 2 girls, this time longer. "Maybe. Now it's time that person listens." Meanwhile, at a mansion on the east side of the city, the chandelier's light reflected off a glass of red wine. Deborah sat across from Nathan. On the table lay a steak gone cold. "You seem distracted lately," she said, without looking into her husband's eyes. Nathan set the glass down. His voice was tired. "Just work." "Work?" Her mother, Loretta, chimed in from the nearby chair. "Work shouldn't make a man come home late 3 days in a row, especially when the press is watching your charity fund." "What are you trying to say?" Nathan asked. "I'm just reminding you that a reputation isn't built in a day, but it can be lost in a single rumor." Nathan didn't respond. He stood up and walked to the balcony. Outside, the streetlights shone through the trees, bright but not warm, just like the life he was living, full of light but lacking warmth. Alina's painting wasn't here, but the face of the man with sad eyes kept appearing every time he closed his eyes. That afternoon, Ed stopped his truck in front of the Grayson mansion. The old pickup looked entirely out of place against the lavish backdrop behind the ornate black and gold gate. He rang the bell, still holding his sun hat, eyes staring through the frosted glass. His heart beat strangely fast, the feeling of someone bringing back a piece of the past. The door opened, Deborah came out first. "Mr. Ed, I don't think it's exactly polite to come looking for Nathan after hours," she said, her voice cold, like the silver chime hanging from the porch. Ringing, but with no echo. "I need to see Mr. Nathan," Ed replied briefly. No smile, no deference. "It's personal." Deborah crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. "Haven't thought about retirement yet, Mr. Ed?" "I don't work for you," he said, eyes never leaving the hall. "I work for the man living here, and I need to speak to him." Without waiting for an invitation, Nathan stepped out, still holding an untouched cup of tea. He saw Ed, paused for a moment, then nodded. "Come in." Deborah moved aside, her eyes still fixed on Ed like he carried some kind of threat. In the downstairs study, a dim desk lamp cast light onto the old oak table. Ed sat across from Nathan. He placed a thin envelope on the table. Inside was Alina's drawing. "This one was drawn by a child at St. Maria's Church," he said evenly. "Her name is Alina. Her sister is Amara. They resemble Clarice so much, I couldn't ignore it. I hope you'll find a way to regain your happiness." Nathan looked at the drawing, his heart skipping a beat. The eyes in the drawing, more like Clarice's than any memory that remained. "You met them too?" "You think what I think?" Nathan asked softly. "Yes. I saw Clarice for the last time about 10 years ago. She stood outside this very gate, waiting for you," Ed said slowly but firmly. "No one came out. She just said, 'I brought the truth,' but no one wanted it. And now there are those two girls. You have to trust your instincts. Deborah stood outside the door, arriving just in time to hear that last part. She pushed the door open, cutting in. "I don't know what this is about, but this is a private home. Nathan doesn't need to be bothered with fantasies from the past." Nathan raised his hand, eyes still on the drawing. "It's okay. Let me listen. You're letting strangers plant ideas in your head again. Have you forgotten who stood by you these past 10 years? Deborah said sharply, pointing at Ed. Ed said nothing. He simply stood, nodded to Nathan. "I've seen those children. They're not rumors. They live like the world has forgotten them. If you do nothing, don't blame yourself later." After Ed left, Nathan stayed behind, alone. He opened the drawer and took out the old photo Amara had given him, for the first time since that meeting. His eyes stopped at the yellowed edge, the film flaking. The woman's face had faded, but her eyes were still there, the eyes of someone waiting to be heard. Without telling anyone, Nathan drove to Marcus's shop, an old friend who used to be a war photographer. His shop was at the end of the old town, where everything carried the scent of the past. Marcus greeted him with a surprised look. "It's been a while. I need your help with something." Nathan handed over the photo. "Restore it, if there's anything left to restore." Marcus didn't ask much. He powered up his equipment and began scanning the photo under a microscope. His hands gently traced each edge of the paper, removed the old frame, brushed away decades of fine dust with a soft brush. This one was kept carefully, but the person who kept it was hurting when they looked at it, Marcus said, not looking up, because the most worn-out part is where the eyes of this woman are. He uploaded the image to the computer, adjusting each layer. Each layer peeled away like a strip of time, until Clarice's face emerged clearly, her eyes seeming to hold water. Marcus sat silently for a while, then exhaled softly. "Do you know, this woman is looking at you like she has something she never got to say." Nathan lowered his head. In the screen's light, his face bore the marks of things never understood or never dared to be admitted. A faded memory surfaced. Clarice sitting behind him after a draining board meeting. She didn't ask, didn't speak, just stroked his hair, fingers running through the sweat-damp strands. that slow rhythm, not out of pity, not out of comfort, but as a way to leave a trace of affection when words had become powerless. When the photo restoration was finished, Marcus turned the screen toward Nathan. This is the highest level of detail I could achieve, probably close to the original. Nathan looked, silent. After a while, he asked, "If those 2 children were mine, how many years have I lost them?" No one answered. In the small room, only the soft click of the camera and the dim light from the screen remained, casting light onto Clarice's face and onto his hand, where the photo was whole, but the heart had started to crack again. That night, Deborah stepped into the study and saw the old photo on the desk, the window wide open despite the cold. Nathan said nothing, just slowly closed the black leather notebook on the table. Inside was Clarice's letter that had never been read, now folded, but every word still intact, as clear as if it had been written that very morning. It was the first time Deborah saw Nathan's eyes red, but not from anger, because of something she couldn't control, and that made her feel cold. It was late. The main hall lights of St. Maria Church had gone out. Only a glow spilled from Sister Teresa's room, where a small desk lamp lit smudged lines of purple ink. On the table lay Clarice's handwritten letter, the paper yellowed and deep-toned, neatly folded as if someone had read it again and again. The 2 children were asleep. Sister Teresa sat alone, her hand gently resting on the edge of the letter, her voice steady, almost a whisper to the darkness. "If one day you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer with you. But I never left you in my heart. I survived with whatever I could, needle and thread, a few meals begged for, and the fragile hope that someone out there still wanted to believe in me." She paused, her gaze touching the worn blanket covering the 2 sleeping girls. Alina breathed steadily, lips pressed tight, as if dreaming of something she had to hold on to. Amara rested an arm across her sister's forehead, like a subconscious habit. The wind stirred lightly at the window, rustling the letter's end. People don't die from suffering. They die from being forgotten. Nathan parked in front of an old motel block in the southern suburbs, where Clarice had lived after vanishing from his life. On the iron door was a faint print. Room 3C, warning, leaky ceiling. He knocked on the door next door, where the lights were still on. 2 elderly women opened the door, old neighbors. Neither of them smiled. "Strange, nobody's asked about her in 10 years. Now someone's looking," one said. "I'm trying to find out about someone named Clarice, who used to live here." The other woman laughed harshly. She thought having a millionaire's baby would change her life. In the end, dragged 2 kids along, sewing clothes all day, coughing until she lost her voice and still couldn't afford medicine. "Did anyone help?" Nathan asked quietly. "Help? Around here?" The other woman snorted. "Back then, when it rained, she sat in the yard, mending clothes late into the night. My boy ran out asking for candy, and she gave him her own piece of cake. People like you probably never lived like that." At the church, the rain had just stopped, water still puddled in the yard. Leo, a younger boy with curly hair, new to the center for about a week, was fumbling with his sweater buttons. Alina sat beside him, gently said, "Left button first, thread from underneath." "I tried, it keeps slipping." Amara walked over and squatted down. "Here, I'll hold it for you." Leo bit his lip, lowered his head. "My mom used to do it, but she died." No one said anything. Then Alina reached out her hand. "Come to our room tomorrow. I'll lend you colored pencils to draw a house. I've never had a real house, so I just draw them." Leo smiled, a small smile, like he was afraid it might disappear. The 3 sat close together under the eaves. The rain had stopped, but the dripping from the old tile roof still echoed like a steady breath. sad, but rhythmic. My parents left when I was born. I lived with my grandma, but she passed away too, and they brought me here. They said I'd have a new family. Leo spoke softly, breaking the silence. Alina looked down at the boy. I never had a complete family either, but I believe we all deserve good things. If you are listening to this story alone, comment bread. And if you are listening to it with someone, write potato. The next afternoon, a black car stopped in front of the church. Nathan stepped out, holding a restored photograph. Sister Teresa opened the door, unsurprised. She simply nodded and said softly, "They're in the backyard." Nathan walked slowly. From a distance, he saw the two children picking up fallen apples and placing them into a cloth basket. The sunlight filtered through the trees, making their hair glow like honey. Amara saw him first. She squinted. Alina looked up after. A breeze passed by, and in that moment, time seemed to stand still. Nathan came closer, unhurried. "Hello, kids," he said gently. The two looked at each other. Then Alina ran up first, clutching the now blurred photo. "We didn't think you'd come back. I came to return the photo." He held out his hand, the photo now framed in thin glass. "But that doesn't mean I'm not your father." The air paused for a beat. Alina looked at Amara. Neither of them cried, but their eyes were red. Amara stepped forward, placing her hand on his. "We don't need the photo anymore. We just need our dad to come." Nathan gave a small nod, then sat down. His hand touched Alina's hair, the way he once touched Clarissa's when she fell asleep at the dinner table years ago. And in that moment, something inside him, like an old root finding soil, began to grow again. Wednesday morning, the sky hadn't even brightened before a thick grey blanket of clouds covered it. In the backyard of St. Maria's Church, a few damp maple leaves stuck to the brick ground. It was so gloomy that even the morning bell sounded muffled. Amara ran into the kitchen, where Sister Teresa was rinsing vegetables for lunch. "Sister, Alina, my sister's in pain. Her hands are cold. She can't stand." Sister Teresa dropped the basket of greens and rushed out after the girl. Alina was slumped on the steps, hands gripping her knees, body shivering. Her face was pale, lips a bluish hue. When the sister touched her forehead, a fierce heat radiated from her skin. "This isn't good," she whispered, then called out loudly, "Emma, call an ambulance! Quick!" Underneath her wool sweater, Alina's heart was racing. She could only whisper a few words. "Don't. Let them take me alone." Amara dropped to her knees and held her sister tightly, her eyes panicked. "I'm going too. I'll go with her." Less than 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived, taking both girls to St. Luke's Hospital. As Sister Teresa climbed into the vehicle, she pulled an old business card from her pocket. The faded words, "Nathan Grayson, Grayson Foundation." She hesitated a moment, then dialed. A woman's voice answered on the other end, clear and polite. "Hello, this is the office of Mr. Nathan Grayson. This is Teresa, a sister at St. Maria's Church. I need to speak with him, immediately. I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson is currently in a meeting. Please tell him this. Alina, a child he once met, is in emergency care at St. Luke's. If he doesn't come now, he might not get another chance." A pause. "Please, hold." Nathan arrived at the hospital after Alina had already been taken into the ER. Outside the waiting room, he found Amara, her face puffy from crying, eyes drained. "How is she?" he asked, voice low. "She hasn't woken up. I don't know what to do." Amara replied, then turned away, gripping her backpack tightly. For the first time in many years, Nathan felt utterly powerless. Sister Teresa stepped out of the doctor's office, holding out a sheet of paper. "The doctors need you to sign this, because you're the only legal guardian they can name." Nathan took the paper, his hand freezing halfway. He signed it, then looked at her. "Why did you call me?" And Sister Teresa replied slowly, "Because if Clarice were still alive, she would have called." In Dr. Howard's office, a man with graying hair, slender build, but a firm voice, Nathan was invited to sit down. On the table was a stack of medical records. "Little Alina shows signs of a serious genetic condition. Cardiac channelopathy," the doctor said. "We had to run extended tests because her heartbeat is irregular, and she had an unusual fever response." Nathan remained silent. The doctor flipped to a sheet of genetic comparison results. "We took your sample from a blood donation at the conference a few months ago. You gave public storage consent. We spoke with Sister Teresa, and she said you might have a blood relation to the girl. The recent results show 99.9% match. No doubt you are the biological father." A very soft exhale. Nathan lowered his head. He placed both hands on his face, then slid them down, eyes red. "If she's my daughter, is it still in time?" The doctor didn't answer right away. Then he spoke gently. "You came. That means it's in time." That afternoon the sky was dim and cool. The light coming through the hospital window wasn't bright enough to illuminate the room, but enough to see the light breeze swaying the curtains. Alina was awake. Her face was pale, but her eyes were still bright. Nathan stepped in. He stopped at the foot of the bed, not daring to come closer. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I'm still alive, right?" Alina replied softly. "You're stronger than I thought." Nathan sat on the edge of the bed. The girl turned, trying to hold his hand. "I think I look like my mom." "You do," he said. "You have her eyes and a heart like mine." In the hallway outside, Sister Teresa stood leaning against the doorframe, eyes quietly watching. An elderly nurse came from the storage room. "That girl," she said, "is the daughter of the patient who once stayed in room 12, isn't she?" "Clarice," Teresa nodded. "She also carried the gene for that disease. It's so rare." Everyone remembered. "She was the only one who ever asked me, 'Do you think a mother can be right, even when she has nothing to prove it?'" the nurse said, eyes slightly wet. Late at night, the lights along Westbridge Avenue quietly lit the yellowing trees. In the Grayson mansion, the crystal chandelier cast a soft glow onto the polished wooden floor, reflecting Deborah leaning against her husband's desk, holding an untouched glass of wine. She silently looked out the glass window, where moonlight fell on the rose garden withering in dry leaves. "He's not the same anymore," Deborah whispered, as if speaking to herself. "That look in his eyes, it's changed." From the next room, her mother, Loretta, stepped out. The hallway light behind her cast her face in a cold, wax-like glow. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Deborah put down the wine glass, her voice low and sharp. "I've endured enough. I did everything to keep him, to protect this family's name. And now, just because two bastard children show up out of nowhere, everything could fall apart. Doctors and nurses at the hospital have seen my husband worrying over 2 orphans. Doesn't he care about my dignity?" Then she opened a drawer and pulled out an old phone. The screen blinked with the name JT. She pressed call. After a few rings, a deep, hoarse voice answered. "Yeah?" Deborah glanced around, then whispered, "Take the 2 kids. Leave nothing behind. Clean it up." There was a short silence on the other end, then the reply, "Higher price with kids involved. Whatever it costs, just don't let Nathan find out." Loretta stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Good. That's the Deborah I raised. At the gate outside the mansion, Mr. Ed was quietly approaching with a folder in hand. He intended to give it to Nathan, documents he had investigated himself about old birth records at the hospital. But as he got closer, he froze. Deborah's voice, though quiet, rang clearly in the silent night. Take the 2 kids. Leave nothing behind. Mr. Ed's heart twinged in a strange way. He held his breath, stepped back behind a bush, and waited until the call ended before hurrying back to his car. He didn't get to hand over the documents to Nathan, but he stepped on the gas, driving by instinct, the instinct of a man who had seen battlefields and glimpsed the darkness in human nature. He knew he had to help Nathan, but without alerting the enemy. He knew how to get the children to safety. 3 o'clock the next afternoon, St. Luke's Hospital, 3rd floor, Pediatrics Department. Amara and Alina sat on the row of blue plastic chairs, holding hands, eyes staring out the window. Alina was still weak, an IV needle taped to her hand, but her eyes had more life than the day before. A man in a black suit, holding a file folder, approached them. He looked neat and proper, wearing a social worker badge. "Amara? Alina?" His voice was gentle. "I'm Mr. Patrick, sent by Mr. Nathan to handle the official adoption paperwork. You'll need to come with me to the district office. It won't take long." The 2 girls looked at each other. Amara hesitated, but when she heard Nathan's name, she nodded. "Do we need to bring anything?" Alina asked. "Just you 2. Everything necessary is at the district office." The man smiled. Not a deep smile, but just enough to be believable. When they reached the parking lot, Alina hesitated at the sight of a black unmarked car. The door opened, and inside was another person, tall, wearing a baseball cap and a black face mask covering his entire face. He said nothing. "Can I sit in the back?" Amara asked. "Get in, quickly. We don't want to miss the schedule." The man's tone suddenly shifted, dry and sharp. The 2 girls climbed in, and the door shut immediately. But just seconds later, Alina collapsed. She clutched her mouth, eyes rolling back. "Amara, there's a smell. Something chemical." Amara screamed, struggling. She used both hands to pound on the window, kicking the back of the front seat. "Let my sister go. Help! Someone help!" The engine roared, but just then, an old silver pickup sped in from behind, overtaking and slamming to a stop in front of the kidnapper's car. The door burst open. Mr. Ed jumped out, running and shouting, "Kidnapping! They're kidnapping children! Call hospital security! Call the police!" A group of patients and nurses nearby turned around, some shouting. A parking lot guard pulled out a baton and ran toward them. The driver tried to reverse, but didn't make it. Ed reached the car and smashed the window with a crowbar he'd brought. "Open the door, you bastard!" Inside, the masked man pulled Alina back, trying to escape through the rear door. But Amara clung to her sister tightly, refusing to let go. "No, you're bad people. We're not going anywhere." Just then, Nathan appeared from the ground floor elevator. He had just been told something had gone wrong. When he saw the car, he ran without thinking. "Amara! Alina!" The girls looked up, their faces soaked with tears, but their eyes widened at the sound of his voice. "Dad!" Amara screamed. Nathan reached them just as the guard yanked open the rear door. The masked man was restrained. The man in the black suit tried to flee, but was tackled to the ground by Ed. Amara held onto Alina, trembling and crying. Nathan knelt, wrapping both girls in his arms. "It's okay now. You're safe. I'm here." Alina whispered, lips trembling. "I thought I'd lost my dad again." Nathan pressed his cheek to her hair, saying nothing. He knew, if he had arrived just minutes later, he might never have heard that word, Dad, again. That same evening, Ed sat in the study with Nathan. On the table, a cold cup of coffee and a file of his notes on the stranger. "You heard the call?" Nathan asked. "Just enough," Ed replied. "Not the name, but the command. And Deborah, she's no stranger to darkness." Nathan stayed silent for a long time. Then he stood, looking out the window, where the breeze tilted the thin curtain and pale light drifted in like it came from another world. "Thank you," he said softly. Ed nodded. "If you need me to take the kids somewhere else, I will." Nathan turned back, eyes resolute. "I'm not running. Not one more time." In the private room, Deborah sat in front of the mirror, wiping off layers of makeup. Her hands trembled slightly. Loretta stepped in. "It's ruined." Deborah nodded. "Then we move on to step 2, she said, her voice like ice cracking off a glacier. And in a corner of the city, in a small house, 2 children slept soundly for the first time after being ripped from the hands of a kidnapper. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the cracks in trust remained. Late in the afternoon, a cold rain poured over the city as if someone were washing away an old chapter. Nathan sat in his study, a cup of tea cooling between his hands. Files opened in front of him, but his mind no longer able to read the words. Outside the window, the rose trellis Clarice had once planted now stood bare with dried branches. The doorbell rang, slowly, as if hesitant. Nathan got up to answer. In front of him stood an elderly woman, a faded wool scarf over her shoulders, clutching a thick envelope. "I'm sorry. My name is Iris. I used to be a nurse, the one who helped deliver Clarice's baby back then." Nathan stood still. That name, spoken by a stranger, still had the power to break through every wall he had tried to build. "I know. You weren't expecting me," she said, her voice trembling like wind through a window pane. "But I can't take this secret with me to the grave." He let her in. Darkness was falling. On the table, the yellow lamp lit a small space just enough to see her faded eyes. "I was forced to sign a falsified medical report," Iris said, opening the envelope and pulling out the real birth records of the 2 children. "Clarice carried a rare heart disease gene. I warned the doctor, but Deborah Grayson was the main sponsor of the hospital. She paid to bury it, so no one would know Clarice once had children with Nathan Grayson." "How much pain was she in?" Nathan whispered. "Clarice once told me something I've never forgotten. I don't need anyone's pity. I just want my child to live without being denied." Iris began to cry, like a child offering a late apology. Nathan bowed his head. He didn't interrupt, didn't say anything about forgiveness. He simply took the records, page by page, as if picking up the shattered pieces of a life buried in silence. The next morning, another piece of news crushed Nathan further. Reporter June placed a small USB stick on the desk in front of Nathan's new personal lawyer. "This is what I found over the past 3 months. The Grayson Foundation has been used by Deborah for money laundering, fake invoices, transfer slips through her mother's shell company. I have the reconciliations with the bank and personal statements. They use the title Educational Support for Orphans to withdraw tens of thousands of dollars every month." "You're sure?" the lawyer asked. June nodded. "I used to believe in those flashy charity programs, until I saw that orphaned child in the hospital without a single qualified guardian." The man said nothing. He held the USB, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the window. "Is there anything Deborah hasn't touched?" The young lawyer entered Nathan's office with a file in hand. He spoke quickly but calmly, his voice clear, like dissecting the past. "We've verified all correspondence between Clarice and the legal department back then. There was a letter that never reached you, blocked by Deborah. In that letter, Clarice agreed to disappear in order to protect you." Nathan said nothing. He just sat up straight. Deborah told Clarice you were going bankrupt, that if you didn't marry her, Grayson Corporation would collapse. And Clarice believed it. She chose to step back out of love for you. Nathan slowly clenched his hands. His fingernails dug into his palms. She stole my child, but worse. She stole my right to love. In the study at the Grayson estate, light from the window shone on Deborah, highlighting the sharp features of a woman who had never believed in love, only in possession. Nathan entered. He laid the documents on the desk one by one. Photos, Clarice's handwritten letters, birth records, evidence of embezzlement, Iris's statement, the legal investigation report. Deborah stood still, unblinking. Then she let out a soft laugh. "So you found those dreamers, did you?" "What did you do, Deborah?" he asked, not shouting, not angry, just a quiet question, heavy with disappointment. "I did what was necessary." "You are a legacy, Nathan, not a man with the right to choose emotions at whim." "And Clarice?" "She was a stain. Nothing more. She was the mother of my child." Deborah took a step back. For the first time, her eyes flickered. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to let justice do the rest." Deborah laughed, but her voice was no longer steady. "Nathan, you're a perfect man. You like perfection, so after the woman you loved left, I was always the top choice. My family background is what could make your life flawless. I'm not afraid of you, Nathan. I've lived my whole life not believing in something called justice. It's the tool of the winner, and I'll still win. And if you want to open that secret box, then I'm telling you now, it could ruin your life and career, because we are husband and wife." Nathan looked at her like someone who had once been a part of his life, now just ruins. "You don't need to fear me, and you don't need to threaten me anymore. I'm not afraid of losing face. The most shameful thing would be failing to protect my child. And that, you can't take away anymore." A cold grey morning. The city's central courthouse was packed. Reporters crowded the gate, camera flashes flickering like white rain. On news pages, the headline, "The Grayson family's historic lawsuit," spread everywhere. The main doors opened. Deborah Grayson stepped down from her private car. She wore an ivory white dress, high-necked and neat, like a goddess of justice, walking with pride in every step. But under the reporter's lenses, her face no longer shone. There was only the coldness of someone used to controlling everything, now dragged before justice. In the courtroom, soft light streamed through stained glass windows. The gallery was full. Marcus, Iris, Mr. Ed, Sister Teresa, the lawyers, and June. All were present. In a corner to the right, Nathan sat silently, hands tightly clasped. On the table in front of him was a pencil drawing, the lines still slightly shaky, but clear, the face of a man with deep eyes, a slightly tilted posture, and a small child asleep on his shoulder. A clerk called the first witness, Amara. The girl stood up. Dark dress, neatly tied hair, hands gently clasped, but eyes unflinching. Her steps were steady, not fast, not shaky. Standing in the middle of the courtroom, Amara looked at Deborah, then at the judge. "My mom used to say, if you don't speak up for the truth, you're also a liar. Today, I don't have a mom anymore, but that woman," she turned toward Deborah, "is still trying to kill my mother one more time." The air was still like a lake. Her words echoed through the room, like a knife piercing each person holding their breath. The lawyer requested a 5-minute break before calling the next witness. In that time, Nathan quietly stepped toward Alina, the little girl sitting beside Sister Teresa, thin and delicate, like a young branch recovering after a storm. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. Alina nodded. "I brought the drawing. It's my mum's voice." When Alina stepped up to the stand, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. She didn't say anything, just silently placed the drawing on the witness table. I don't remember my mum's face clearly, but I've drawn this face for 10 years. In my memory, this was the man who held my mum when she was scared, and today, he is my dad. Alina turned to Nathan. I don't want you to cry for what you've lost. I just hope you won't stay silent one more time. In that moment, Nathan broke into tears, not from guilt, but from gratitude to the little girl who just gave him one more chance to make things right. One by one, people stepped forward. Ed, the one who witnessed and stopped the kidnapping Deborah had orchestrated. Hurting a mother is a crime. Killing a child's childhood and identity is wickedness. Iris took the stand, trembling. I kept silent for money, but money doesn't buy sleep. I'm still alive, so I have to speak. Reverend Paul, who had once held Clarice's funeral, brought a small piece of paper containing her final words before she passed. Don't tell him. Let him live well. I just beg you. Let my children breathe under their real names. June, the last to testify, presented financial records, bank statements, and investigation reports on the Grayson Foundation. No flowery words, only numbers that spoke for themselves. Abandoned children, while millions of dollars vanished from the hands of the charity fund. The court recessed for deliberation. Amara held her sister's hand. A small hand, cold but warm in Nathan's palm. He didn't speak, just sat there, like a father who for the first time dared to sit still and listen to the full story of his own life. 30 minutes later, court resumed. The judge, a silver-haired man who had presided over hundreds of cases, read the verdict in a low voice, each word dropping like the final exclamation mark of truth. The court declares, Mrs. Deborah Grayson, guilty of obstruction of justice, financial fraud, and causing psychological and physical harm to minors. Simultaneously, the court confirms the official custody of Mr. Nathan Grayson over the two minors, Amara and Alina Clarice Grayson. No one clapped. There was only silence stretching out like a final low note, the kind that makes it impossible to turn away. Deborah stood up, her face pale. Her eyes swept past Nathan, but he didn't look back. He was looking at the two children, this time with his whole heart. That afternoon, Nathan's phone rang in his pocket. Dr. Howard. Good news. We've scheduled the surgery for the end of the month. Thanks to early detection of the gene, Alina's chances of recovery are very promising. Nathan gripped the phone, looking up at the sky. A cloud had just broken apart, and the first sunlight in days touched Alina's hair as it danced lightly in the wind. He turned to Amara. Tomorrow, we'll start over. Every breakfast, every bedtime, every hug, I owe you both. The first dawn after the trial shone through each window of the Westbridge mansion, a house that had been silent for over a decade. Now, it was no longer a fortress for a lonely man. It was a home. Laughter rang out from the kitchen. Not loud, but enough to melt away a whole winter. Nathan fumbled with the oven, trying to flip the pancakes without tearing them apart. Batter splattered onto the counter, smoke rising from one that had burned. Uncle, this one looks more like a map than a heart. Leo, the curly-haired boy, grinned as he set the knives and forks on the table. We can even eat burnt pancakes if you promise not to make lunch. Amara shrugged, arms crossed, looking at her dad with a mix of scolding and affection. Alina said nothing. She was leaning on the table, giggling. Her face still pale, but her eyes were shining like she'd never been through an emergency. When Mum cooked for us, she used to burn the first one too, Alina said, her voice barely a breath. Nathan turned around. He placed the last plate of pancakes on the table, then sat down, slipping an arm around the shoulders of the two girls. I think maybe the first time doing anything is a little clumsy, he said softly. "But if we're patient, it'll become familiar." They ate in the gentle morning light. On the table, a vase of white flowers, Clarisse's favorite, sat among the glasses of milk and misshapen pancakes. Not perfect, but enough. That afternoon, they went together to the small cemetery where Clarisse rested. No one spoke on the way, only the sound of the wind and the steady turn of the wheels. A simple white grave, no tall stone, no iron fence, just a slab engraved with the words, Clarisse M. A mother who was never silent. Nathan knelt down. He laid a bunch of white flowers on the grave. Wild daisies, the kind Clarisse used to pick by the roadside when she was young. No candles, no poems. Only the quiet gaze of a man trying to say what he had held in too long. Alina asked softly, "Do you regret it, Dad?" Nathan turned to her. "I don't regret finding you. I only regret not finding you sooner." Amara stood behind him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "If Mum could hear, she'd forgive you." Nathan looked at the grave, then up at the sky. The sunset stretched across the trees like a thin blanket. "I don't know if she'll forgive me, but I promise I'll live in a way that makes it worth forgiving." Back home, the warm lights were already on. A jumble of small shoes scattered by the door, old and new, none of them lined up. In the living room, Clarisse's portrait hung on the wall, catching the last of the evening light. The child in the painting, with eyes like Alina's, seemed to be smiling. Nathan took off his coat and hung it on the rack. He could hear Leo reciting a poem off-beat, Amara correcting him, and Alina trying out colors on a new drawing, the sound of a cup breaking. Then laughter. He didn't go into the kitchen, just stood there, the door ajar, the wind blowing in, but no one felt cold anymore. Because for the first time the house truly had voices, voices of life, of love, of people calling each other by name, without fear, without hiding. And that's what remained. Not the pain, not the loss, but the family. Imperfect, yet finally whole. In a world where truth is sometimes hidden under the guise of power and love is traded for fame, this story is just a small reminder that sometimes the right thing does not come from harsh judgments, but from the journey of forgiveness and daring to start over. We cannot choose where we are born, but we can choose how to live, choose how to love. Nathan, Clarisse, Amara, Alina, each of them was lost, was silent. But after all, it was the voice, no matter how small, that built a home. Are you silent about something that haunts you? Is there someone you loved but never had a chance to say sorry? And if today is the last chance to keep someone, do you have the courage to step up and knock on their heart again? This story ends, but perhaps what remains will begin to live in you if you dare to step out of silence. Because sometimes love does not need to be perfect. Thank you for listening until the end. Go to bed early if it's late. If it's still sunny, go out for a walk with your loved ones. Summer is coming. See you in the next story.